In 1965, the United States entered the Vietnam War to contain communism from spreading from North Vietnam to South Vietnam and bordering countries. While American soldiers were in Vietnam, some of the men had babies with Vietnamese women. American soldiers left these children behind in Vietnam. These biracial babies are known as Amerasians. Dust of life was an expression used by the Vietnamese, referring to the Amerasians to be the poorest of the poor. When Thi Van, a Vietnamese orphan, said, if you didn't have a legitimate father or weren't full Vietnamese, they would oftentimes be abandoned in the streets. Since America was involved with the war, these Amerasians were looked down upon. Their half-bred looks made them easy targets for discrimination. Operation Babylift was necessary since the Amerasian safety was compromised by the possible dangers that the Viet Cong in North Vietnam posed. Although Operation Babylift was controversial, this rescue mission was necessary because it provided hope for the Amerasians in Vietnam for the opportunities that America opened up for them. Because North Vietnam was at war with America, it created conflict for the Amerasians living there. Denby Fawcett, an American reporter stationed in Vietnam, reveals conditions of a typical orphanage.
There were a lot, and the thing that I remember most about them is they were just all lying there in a room. Usually when little children, they're active and they're moving around, and they were kind of like zombies. They were just lying there because no one paid attention to them. They were fed and they were clean, given clean diapers and a clean bed, but they didn't get much stimulation, and it was very sad to see.
In 1973, Nixon signed a ceasefire agreement in Paris with representatives from South and North Vietnam. However, on March 30, 1975, Da Nang, South Vietnam's second largest city, was captured by North Vietnam, which interrupted the attempts to talk for peace. By the middle of April, Saigon was under attack from 3 different sides. Many government officials and private citizens left Saigon. The safety of the Amerasians were compromised as North Vietnam soldiers spread out through South Vietnam. I heard the Viet Cong were attacking nearby and they would arrive here any day. It was March 1975, what I heard really worried me. If you'd worked for Americans and had racially mixed children, they said that those kids would be gathered up, they would be soaked in gasoline and burned. Sherry Clark, the Friends of Children of Vietnam representative in Vietnam, recalls that the country was collapsing around us. We had no idea what to expect at all. Provinces were falling like dominoes, and Catholic and Buddhist sisters were running by boat en route to Saigon with the children they had found who were abandoned. Humanitarian groups who work with the orphans in Vietnam urged the American government to shoulder an emergency evacuation. On April 3rd, 1975, President Gerald Ford announced,
I have directed that money from a $2 million special foreign aid children's fund be made available to fly 2,000 South Vietnamese orphans to the United States as soon as possible.
The Air Force would use cargo planes of all types in Operation Babylift. Operation Babylift began on April 2nd, 1975. The flight left on April 4th, 1975, from the Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base close to Saigon and carried 226 Vietnamese orphans and 77 Americans. It was expected to land in the Travis Air Force Base in California. Due to engine failure, the plane crashed shortly after takeoff, killing 133 orphans, 33 civilians, and 11 crew members. Although the first plane crashed, all the other flights went through as planned. Many people appreciated the operation, but some thought it was unnecessary. There was a debate between Congress and the White House. Senator Thomas Eagleton quoted, "The President had no constitutional authority to use U.S. armed forces to evacuate foreign nationals from South Vietnam." Ford responded, "I did it because the people would have been killed and I'm proud of it." There was conflict not only within the American government, but also between the American and South Vietnamese government.
These conversations were very political. They really did not have the well-being of the children in mind. The Vietnamese government was insisting that the children had to be returned, but I think it was a hollow insistence, because since that time I've met with many of the sisters of St. Paul's, and they've said that there was no way that the country was prepared to take care of those children.
The Center for Constitutional Rights with California lawyers filed a class action lawsuit against Henry Kissinger on November 5, 1975, because no attempt was made to find many of the babies' families before putting them on the airlift plane. It violated the due process of the law under the Fifth Amendment. Record checks showed that of the 1,830 records check conducted, 274 children were not properly released for adoption. An appeal was made to the Ninth Circuit Court and remained unresolved for 3 years. I don't know what the Americans were thinking when they took the babies away on the plane. Whether they are going to a better life is questionable. The fact is, they died in the crash. Had they stayed in Vietnam and not left on that plane, they may still be alive today. Pat Palmer, an American adoptive parent of an Amerasian child, recalls, James was slightly malnourished, had scabies, was very weak, and yet could walk by holding onto furniture. I loved nothing better than to be held. While their children were deprived and malnourished, most of them were able to integrate to their families well. According to the U.S. General Accounting's Office report on Vietnamese Amerasian resettlement, 87% of the Amerasians were happy about coming to the United States. The report states, Amerasians were happy for the following reasons: work opportunities, reduced discrimination, the freedom, and the educational opportunities. An example of an adoptee who took advantages in America and became successful is Stephen George.
Just the fact that I've been able to go to high school, go to college, and also having my parents being able to afford to do that even at a young age, you know, to go to a public school system. A lot of Vietnamese children don't have that opportunity. As far as my success in business, I've had a lot of different opportunities to try different things where I think in Vietnam sometimes it's a little bit harder.
If the Amerasians stayed in Vietnam, the opportunities would not have been as good as their life in America, because according to the BPSOS statistics database, 62% did not complete elementary school, and only 4 Amerasians completed high school in Vietnam. Many of the adoptees that went back to Vietnam experienced some of the conditions they would have faced and developed a sense of gratitude toward America and Operation Babylift.
Just experiencing somewhat the way that people live in Vietnam now makes me appreciate that my birth father had relinquished me and put me up for adoption.
I'd much rather grow up, in the United States from what I've seen, because, a lot of those kids don't have an opportunity for health care. They don't have an opportunity for an education. And, when they're 8 years old, I mean, it's common to see people 7, 8 years old, like, working all day for their families. And that's just the way that it is.
The Amerasians that came to America in Operation Babylift not only seized the opportunity, they gave back to the country in many different ways.
Well, I'm an American. Yeah, I'm happy I'm Vietnamese and all that, but in my heart, I'm just an American. When I joined the military, I was happy. That's something that you can always say that I did for my country,
Jennifer Wen Noon, an Amerasian flown to America in Operation Babylift, wrote a letter to President Gerald Ford thanking him for his humanitarian effort which saved thousands of lives. The letter goes on to say, the Vietnamese adoptee community has also taken on an international role in facilitating the healing process between Vietnam and the United States. Operation Babylift was necessary because the Amerasian safety was compromised because of the possible dangers of the Viet Cong in North Vietnam. While in Vietnam, the Amerasians were forced to live in poverty and discrimination. The rescue mission opened up opportunities and provided hope for the Amerasians for a better life. America provided the Amerasians a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In the end, Operation Babylift took these orphans from a life full of hate to a life full of hope and opportunity.